The small transport ship descended through the blue mist of Valara's upper atmosphere, its engines humming softly. Ethan Cole sat near the window, gazing at the alien landscape that unfolded beneath him. A world covered in shimmering crystal plains and silver forests. It was beautiful, calm, and utterly unlike Earth. He was the first human ever invited to teach biology on this distant planet. For him, this wasn't just a job, it was history. When the ship landed, a group of tall, pale-skinned beings waited to greet him. The Valarans looked elegant and otherworldly. Their faces were smooth, their eyes large and luminous, and their movements slow but graceful. As if they existed in a slightly different rhythm of time, one of them stepped forward, a woman with long white hair and curious eyes that almost glowed faintly in the soft light. She smiled politely and introduced herself. "Welcome, human Ethan Cole," she said in fluent English, though her voice had a melodic tone. "I am Lyra. I will guide you through your stay at the academy." Her tone was calm and formal, but her eyes betrayed something else, a spark of curiosity, the kind that belonged to a mind hungry for understanding. Ethan smiled back. "Thank you, Lyra. I'm honored to be here." The academy was magnificent, vast towers made of glass-like material that shimmered in different colors depending on the sunlight. The halls were quiet, filled with soft echoes of distant footsteps and the whisper of learning machines that floated silently in the air. Ethan was shown to his quarters, a simple but elegant room overlooking the gardens below. That evening, Lyra visited him again to explain the teaching schedule. As they talked, she asked gentle questions about Earth, the oceans, the cities, and the creatures that filled his world. She seemed especially fascinated by the idea of humans living with animals, something rare on Valara. "Your kind forms emotional bonds with other species?" she asked with a tilt of her head. "Even with creatures that cannot speak?" Ethan chuckled. "Yes, we do. Dogs, cats, even birds. They become family to us." Lyra blinked slowly, her eyes bright with confusion and wonder. Strange, yet beautiful. When the first class began the next morning, Ethan entered the large lecture hall, feeling hundreds of curious eyes watching him. Valarans of different ages filled the seats, all dressed in flowing robes, all perfectly silent. They looked more like an audience at an ancient temple than students at a university. Ethan took a breath and began his lecture about human anatomy. He projected a holographic image of the human body. The Valarans leaned forward, their expressions serious. He spoke in simple terms, describing how human organs worked together, how their cells carried oxygen, how their hearts pumped endlessly through joy, fear, or sadness. Every word seemed to pull them deeper into fascination. For them, life wasn't something messy or emotional. It was a science to be observed. But Ethan's words gave it color. Lyra sat in the front row, her attention fixed on him. She wrote notes quickly, her hand moving with mechanical precision, but her expression softened whenever he spoke about emotion, about how stress could make a human heart beat faster, or how happiness released chemicals that made people feel alive. After class, Lyra stayed behind. The hall emptied until only she and Ethan remained. "I wish to understand something," she said quietly, stepping closer. "You speak of emotions as if they are real forces, yet in our biology such feelings do not exist. Are they not illusions?" Ethan smiled, amused and touched by her question. "No, they're very real. Emotions shape our behavior, our choices, our connections. They even affect our health." Lyra's eyes shone. "Then perhaps emotion is another form of energy, one we have not yet measured." Ethan laughed softly. Maybe that's true. From that day, Lyra attended every lecture he gave. Sometimes she asked more questions than all the other students combined. Her curiosity seemed endless, sometimes scientific, sometimes childlike. She wanted to know how humans laughed, why they cried, why they risked their lives for others. Ethan noticed that she treated learning as a sacred act. To her, understanding humanity was more than study, it was discovery. Days turned into weeks. Lyra began accompanying Ethan outside the academy, showing him the glowing forests and mirror lakes of Valara. They would walk along the floating bridges and talk for hours. She asked about Earth sunsets, about rain, about the sound of thunder. Ethan told her about oceans that roared and cities that never slept. She listened with awe, sometimes closing her eyes as if trying to imagine it. "You live among chaos," she said once. "Your world sounds loud and full of conflict." "It is," he replied, smiling faintly. but it's also full of beauty. You can't have one without the other. She looked at him thoughtfully. Maybe that is what we lack. Balance between perfection and passion. One afternoon, during a quiet moment in the garden, Lyra brought up a new topic. Today you mentioned reproduction in humans, she said, sitting beside him under a crystal tree that shimmered softly. You said it involves both physical and emotional connection. For us, it is a process done in laboratories. We contribute genetic material. The rest is done by machines. There is no connection, Ethan nodded carefully. That's very different from us. For humans, it's a bond between two people who care for each other. It's more than biology. It's love, trust, comfort. Lyra's brow furrowed. Love, that word again. You use it as though it is a scientific law. Ethan chuckled. It's not science. It's what makes us human. She looked at him for a long time, her silver eyes reflecting the sunlight. Perhaps I want to understand that law. He wasn't sure what she meant, but her sincerity struck him. She wasn't teasing or mocking. She truly wanted to understand what humans felt when they loved. For her, it was not about attraction but discovery. It made Ethan realize how alien her world truly was, and how lonely it must feel to live without emotion. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her questions, her innocent curiosity. She reminded him of the reason he became a scientist, not to discover facts but to connect worlds through understanding. He realized that Lyra was not just learning about humanity, she was trying to feel it for the first time. In the days that followed, Ethan decided to show her more than lectures. He began teaching her through experience. They watched old Earth movies together, simple romantic dramas where people smiled, cried, and hugged. Lyra observed every moment carefully, her expression shifting between wonder and confusion. Why do they cry when they are happy? She asked during one scene. Because emotions mix, Ethan explained. Sometimes happiness comes with tears. It's how we release everything we hold inside. Lyra nodded slowly, her voice soft. We have no such release. We only move forward. Maybe that is why our hearts feel empty. Ethan noticed that she often placed her hand over her chest as if expecting to feel a heartbeat of emotion there. The gesture was innocent, but it showed how deeply she wanted to understand what it meant to be human. One day, during a practical lesson, Ethan showed the class how human DNA could adapt to environmental changes. After everyone left, Lyra remained again. She stood by the holographic projector staring at the rotating image of a human cell. Your species is fragile, she said quietly. Your bones can break. Your hearts can stop. Yet you endure. Why? Ethan walked over, his voice calm. Because we find reasons to live, people, dreams, love. That's what keeps us going. She turned toward him, her eyes reflecting the glow of the hologram. Then love is not just emotion. It is survival, he nodded. Exactly. Lyra smiled faintly, something rare for her kind. It wasn't a practiced expression. It was real, unsteady, but full of light. For a moment, Ethan felt the air between them change, softer, warmer. It wasn't romance yet. It was discovery. Two beings from different worlds sharing a spark of understanding. That evening, Lyra recorded her research notes. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke to the recorder. Today I observed that humans attach emotion to biology. Their reproduction is not only genetic but emotional. They create life through connection. I find this remarkable. I want to feel what they feel, not to copy but to understand. As her voice faded, she looked out the window toward the stars, wondering if understanding humanity meant becoming a little human herself. Meanwhile, Ethan wrote his own report for Earth Command, noting that Velerans were brilliant but emotionally distant. They are perfect in thought, he wrote, but they have lost the art of feeling. If one among them could rediscover that, it could change everything. He didn't realize that the one who might do that was already sitting under the same stars, thinking about him with a feeling she couldn't yet name. The next morning, Lyra entered class early. She carried a small crystal notebook and stood waiting for Ethan. When he arrived, she said something that made him stop in surprise. Professor Ethan, she said softly, I think I am beginning to understand what you call emotion. When I see you, I feel something warm here. She placed her hand gently on her chest. It is strange, it is new, but I do not wish to lose it. Ethan didn't know what to say. Her words were innocent, pure, and deeply honest. He smiled gently. That's emotion, Lyra. It means you're alive and not just existing, but living. She looked at him, her eyes shining. Then I will keep learning. And from that moment, both of them knew that what began as a lesson in biology had turned into something far greater, a journey into... Weeks passed on Valara, and the bond between Ethan and Lyra grew stronger. The academy's corridors, once cold and formal, now echoed softly with their laughter and discussions. Lyra's curiosity seemed endless. She questioned everything about humans, from the simplest gestures to the deepest emotions. Sometimes she asked questions so profound that Ethan found himself pausing, unsure of how to explain. One afternoon they walked along a glassy bridge that spanned a crystal lake. The surface reflected the twin suns, making the water glow faintly. Lyra looked down at the lake and then back at Ethan. "Professor, you speak often about the human bond, about connection, about love," she said carefully. "I understand it intellectually. I see it in your words and in your behavior. But I do not understand how it is truly experienced. How does one feel love in action?" Ethan considered her words. For humans, love was something learned, something felt, but something that could not be fully described. He smiled gently. "Lyra, love is not something I can just show you in a single lesson. It is something you experience through trust, care, and sharing life with someone. Words only guide the way." Lyra nodded, her gaze focused on the shimmering water. "Then, I wish to experience it. I wish to feel the bond that humans speak of." Ethan's heart skipped. He understood her request, but he had to approach it carefully. Valarans had no concept of emotional intimacy as humans did, and her desire to feel it was innocent yet powerful. "Feeling it doesn't require actions that are inappropriate," he said softly. "You can experience it through closeness, shared moments, and understanding. You can learn about it through trust and care." Lyra's eyes lit up. "Then teach me." In the following days, Ethan began to design small exercises, ways for Lyra to experience human emotion without violating her cultural norms. They spent hours walking in the silver forests, observing the way light fell through the leaves, talking about fears and dreams and sharing stories of human childhoods. She listened intently, asking questions about why humans feared loss, why they celebrated small victories, why they comforted each other. Each answer made her pause and reflect, her hand sometimes brushing her chest as if she could feel what he described. One morning, Ethan introduced a new concept, the human embrace. He demonstrated a simple gesture of comfort, wrapping his arms around himself to simulate holding someone in need. Lyra watched, tilting her head. "This is how you share trust, how you show care without words." "Yes," Ethan said. "It is a way to tell someone you are here, that you are safe, that they matter to you." Lyra hesitated, then mimicked the gesture. She stood with arms crossed, gently pressing her hands against her shoulders.
"It feels
unusual," she admitted, "yet comforting. I sense warmth where there was none before." Ethan smiled. "That's the start. Feeling warmth for someone else is the foundation of connection. Over time, it grows into care, affection, and eventually love." She looked at him seriously. "Then if I continue learning, I could understand love fully?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, if you are patient. Love cannot be rushed. It is something humans grow into." The next exercise involved shared vulnerability. Ethan recounted a story from his youth, a tale of loss and fear that had shaped him. He spoke honestly about the sadness he had carried and the people who had helped him through it. Lyra listened in silence, her silver eyes wide. She did not speak immediately, but when she finally did, her voice was soft. "I have not known such fear, or such care. Your species bears pain in a way my people cannot, yet you survive it. You survive because of connection." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. Humans are fragile, but our connections make us resilient. We find strength in each other." Lyra's understanding seemed to deepen each day. She began to notice her own emotions, subtle changes she could not name. Sometimes she felt a flutter when Ethan was near. Sometimes she felt warmth at his words or frustration when he disagreed with her ideas. These were foreign sensations, yet they fascinated her. One evening, as they sat on a balcony overlooking the twin moons, Lyra spoke again. "Professor, I think I am beginning to feel something. For you, I do not fully understand it. It is not curiosity, not knowledge, but a sensation I cannot describe." Ethan took a breath, careful not to make her feel uncomfortable. "Lyra, what you are feeling is natural. It is the start of connection. Humans often feel this way toward those they trust deeply. She looked at him earnestly. Then may I explore this feeling further? Ethan hesitated, knowing he had to guide her carefully. You may, he said finally, but only through understanding, shared experiences, and learning. Feeling does not require crossing boundaries. It requires patience and care. Lyra's expression softened, a quiet gratitude in her gaze. From that moment, they began exploring human emotion more deeply. They shared music from Earth, listened to stories of families, and even watched simulations of human relationships. Each new lesson brought laughter, sometimes tears, and always a sense of closeness. One afternoon, Lyra brought up a delicate question. You mentioned reproduction in humans. It is more than biology. It is emotional. Does that mean love is necessary for reproduction? Ethan nodded. For many humans, yes. Love and trust make the act meaningful. But humans can reproduce without love. What matters is connection, understanding, and respect. Lyra thought carefully. Then experiencing reproduction fully is not just learning biology. It is learning trust, care, and emotion. Is that correct? Yes, Ethan replied. It is not an act of curiosity. It is an act of connection of life, and that connection is sacred. Her eyes reflected the silver moonlight. Then I wish to explore this connection. Not as an experiment, but as understanding. To feel what humans feel when they give life and care. Ethan remained silent for a moment, sensing the weight of her words. Lyra's request was not trivial. She was asking to understand humanity at its deepest level. Yet her request was innocent, intellectual, and pure. I will guide you, he said gently. But you must promise to approach it with patience and respect. Feelings cannot be forced. I promise, she said solemnly. Over the next weeks, their lessons became more personal. Ethan taught Lyra about gestures of affection, about small acts that communicate care. He showed her how humans comfort each other through presence, touch of the hand, or shared attention. Lyra practiced diligently, observing the way her own emotions shifted. She laughed more, listened more, and even expressed concern for Ethan in ways that surprised him. One rainy evening, as they watched simulated storms on Valara, Lyra admitted something quietly. I feel attachment. I think it is what you call love. I do not understand it fully, but I wish to. Ethan's heart swelled. He could see her growing not only in understanding, but in emotional depth. That is the first step. You are learning to feel, to care, to connect. That is human love. Lyra's eyes sparkled. Then I will continue. I will learn everything humans feel, and one day perhaps I will understand fully what it means to give and receive life with care. Ethan smiled at her determination. He knew this journey would take time, patience, and guidance. But already Lyra had taken the first step into a world of feeling, a world his people took for granted. He was proud, not as a teacher but as a witness to something extraordinary. An alien soul discovering the power of human connection. And in the quiet of the glowing forest, under Valara's twin moons, two beings from different worlds began a journey that would change them both forever. A journey into the heart, where understanding became feeling, and knowledge became love. The days on Valara had grown longer and warmer as the twin suns climbed higher in the sky. Ethan noticed subtle changes in Lyra's behavior. She laughed more freely, lingered near him longer, and sometimes her silver eyes seemed to hold questions she didn't yet know how to ask. The lessons they shared about human emotion were no longer purely academic. They had become a journey of discovery, one that pulled them closer with each passing day. One morning, the Academy announced an unexpected field assignment. The students were to observe the ecosystems in Valara's northern plains, a stretch of crystal grasslands and floating rock formations. Ethan and Lyra were paired together, a combination he welcomed. He had grown protective of her curiosity and of the way she approached life with both intellect and innocence. As they journeyed across the plains, the air shimmered with heat, and small crystalline creatures scuttled over the grass. Lyra moved carefully, fascinated by everything around her, yet frequently glancing at Ethan. Your species sees connection everywhere, she said softly. Even in animals and plants, humans sense relationships and meaning. That's true, Ethan said, scanning the horizon. We see life as a network of bonds, some obvious, some invisible. Connection makes everything stronger. Communities, families, even friendships with animals. Lyra considered this, tilting her head. I think I understand. Our science isolates systems. We do not see relationships, only functions. Humans see the soul of the system. Ethan smiled. You're learning quickly. They paused at a crystal lake. Its surface reflected the sunlight in a dazzling array of colors, almost blindingly bright. Ethan decided it was time for a more personal lesson. Lyra, he began, you've been learning about emotion for weeks, but understanding feeling is more than observation. It's about experience, about sharing moments with another being. Lyra's eyes widened. Experience? But you mean to feel what humans feel? Yes, Ethan said gently. Through gestures, through trust, through being present. You've already started. Now we take it further, with care, patience, and respect. Lyra nodded, her expression determined. I am ready. I wish to understand fully. Their first exercise was to share fears. Ethan told her about moments from his past, times when he had felt isolated, when he feared failure, or when he had lost someone he loved. He described the way grief and anxiety had weighed on him, but also how support from friends had carried him through. Lyra listened intently, never interrupting, absorbing every detail. You speak of pain as if it shapes the soul, she said softly. In Valara, pain is controlled and removed. We do not dwell on it. But humans, you let it shape you, Ethan nodded. Pain gives perspective. Without it, joy has no meaning, and the connections we build through hardship are the strongest. Lyra remained quiet, her mind processing. After a long pause, she said, then emotional experience is necessary for growth. Humans are fragile, yet they grow because they feel. That's right, Ethan said. Feeling everything, even pain, allows humans to build love and trust. It makes life more alive. That night, as they rested under a glowing canopy of Valaran flora, Lyra practiced what she had learned. She reached out carefully, placing her hand near Ethan's without touching him directly, trying to sense his presence and the warmth he radiated. Ethan noticed and smiled. It's not the touch alone, he said softly. It's intention. It's being aware of the other person, caring for them without expecting anything in return. Lyra nodded, closing her eyes. She felt something stirring in her chest, a sensation unfamiliar, both thrilling and gentle. I feel it, this warmth. It is not fear. It is not curiosity, it is connection. Ethan's heart swelled. Good. That is the first step in understanding human emotion fully. Over the next week, their lessons continued, each more intimate and complex than the last. Ethan taught her about subtle gestures, the way a hand on a shoulder could reassure, the way shared silence could communicate trust, and the way a simple smile could ease anxiety. Lyra observed and practiced, often with shy hesitation, yet always with growing confidence. One afternoon, as they studied the flora of the plains, Lyra paused, staring at a group of glowing plants. Professor, I noticed that your species often associates emotion with reproduction. Is this always connected? Ethan took a careful breath. Humans often attach emotional significance to reproduction because it involves trust and connection. It is not only about biology, it is about care, about wanting to bring life into the world with someone you respect and love. Lyra considered this. Then to reproduce fully, one must understand love, trust, and connection. It is not sufficient to understand the body. One must understand the mind and the heart. Yes, Ethan said. The physical aspect is only one part. The emotional bond makes it meaningful. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes wide and serious. Then, if I wish to understand fully, I must explore the emotional part first. Ethan hesitated, understanding her meaning but knowing boundaries were important. You can, but only through shared moments, trust, and emotional understanding, not through shortcuts. True understanding comes gradually. Lyra nodded. I understand. That is acceptable. I wish to proceed. From that day, their time together became more focused on emotional connection. They shared stories of their lives, discussed dreams and regrets, and explored feelings they had never articulated before. Lyra's responses became more nuanced. She laughed at Ethan's humor, expressed concern for his well-being, and occasionally displayed subtle signs of attachment, such as leaning closer during lessons or observing him quietly when he worked. One evening, as they sat by a glowing lake watching the reflection of the twin moons, Lyra spoke softly. Professor, I think I am beginning to feel something stronger than curiosity. I do not yet know its name, but it is warm and persistent. It arises whenever you speak or act with care. Ethan remained silent for a moment, considering his response. Lyra, what you feel is real. It is part of human connection. Humans call it attachment. Over time, it can grow into love, a bond that guides actions, protects others, and creates deep emotional understanding. Lyra's expression softened, her usual precision replaced with vulnerability. Then my experience is progressing. I feel the connection, though it is confusing. Yet I do not wish to suppress it. I wish to learn from it. Ethan nodded. That is the right approach. Emotions cannot be forced. They must be observed, experienced, and nurtured. In the following days, Lyra began documenting her experiences in detail. She recorded the emotions she observed, the warmth she felt, and the subtle changes in her perception of others. Her notes reflected growing awareness, not only of human emotion but of her own evolving understanding of herself. Some of the other students began to notice her unusual behavior. She laughed more openly, lingered near Ethan, and occasionally displayed subtle gestures of care. Whispers circulated through the academy, questioning whether Lyra's attachment to a human was appropriate. Some scholars were curious, others wary, yet Lyra remained undeterred, focused on her lessons and the sensations she could not yet fully name. One day, as they returned from an assignment in the floating crystal forests, Lyra stopped abruptly. Professor, I have a question. Difficult, perhaps. I wish to understand how humans share their deepest connection during reproduction, not the physical act, but the emotional bond. How do humans ensure care, trust, and love when creating life? Ethan looked at her, heart pounding. Her request was innocent, yet profound. Lyra, that bond is sacred. It cannot be rushed. It begins with trust, patience, and emotional understanding. If you wish to explore it, you must be willing to invest time, to experience all the steps we've discussed. Lyra nodded solemnly. I am willing. I wish to understand fully, not as experiment, not as curiosity, but as learning the human heart. Ethan smiled, deeply moved by her sincerity. Then we continue carefully. You are ready to experience the connection humans call love, in its most gentle and respectful form. From that moment, their journey took on a new dimension. Lessons were no longer just about observation. They became exercises in emotional presence, trust, and understanding. They practiced sharing vulnerability, recognizing attachment, and nurturing care. Each day, Lyra's emotions grew richer, more complex, and more human-like. One night under the twin moons, Lyra turned to Ethan. Professor, I feel something I do not yet understand. It is warm, persistent, and comforting. I believe it is connection. I wish to explore it further. Ethan looked at her, knowing the journey ahead would be delicate but extraordinary. Then we continue, Lyra, step by step, emotion by emotion. And when you understand it fully, you will know what it means to give life with care. Lyra smiled faintly, a mixture of determination and wonder in her eyes. I will learn. I will feel everything humans feel, and perhaps one day I will understand the meaning of love. As the moons reflected on the crystal lake, two beings from different worlds sat side by side, sharing warmth, trust, and the beginnings of a bond that would change them both forever. In the quiet of Valara's night, the journey into the human heart continued, deeper and more profound with every passing moment. The following weeks at the academy were filled with quiet tension. While Lyra had grown more confident in her understanding of human emotion, her progress did not go unnoticed. Some scholars watched her closely, whispering to one another, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. It was unusual, even controversial, for a student to display such emotional depth toward a human teacher. Yet Lyra remained undeterred, focused entirely on her lessons and the sensations she was learning to identify. Ethan, aware of the attention, made sure to guide her carefully. Each session became more structured, yet more intimate in understanding. They explored human behaviors that Valarans rarely observed, gestures of affection, moments of vulnerability, and the unspoken communication that humans relied upon to connect with one another. Lyra absorbed everything with intense focus, her silver eyes reflecting not only understanding but a growing emotional complexity. One morning, during a class on human relationships, Ethan explained the role of trust in emotional bonding. Humans build connection through honesty, consistency, and care, he said. Trust is the foundation. Without it, emotional bonds cannot exist. It is essential for relationships, for family, and for love. Lyra listened, nodding slowly. I see. On Valara, trust is often abstract. It is measured and verified. Humans, you allow trust to grow naturally without certainty, and yet it strengthens connection? Yes, Ethan replied. Trust is not about guarantees. It is about willingness to be vulnerable, to accept risk, and to care anyway. Lyra considered this. Then trust is both courage and choice. It is necessary for the bonds you call love. Ethan smiled. Exactly. And you are learning it quickly. Later that day, Lyra accompanied Ethan to a research lab where human simulations were projected. They observed scenarios of human families, friends, and communities interacting. Lyra was fascinated by the subtle gestures, a hand placed on a shoulder to console, a shared smile in the midst of conflict, a reassuring glance across a crowded room. She noted these meticulously, her mind constantly analyzing and her heart slowly absorbing the warmth she could not yet name. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long silver shadows across the lab, Lyra turned to Ethan. Professor, I feel my emotions are shifting. I notice warmth when I observe you, and I feel concern for your well-being. These are unfamiliar sensations. What is happening to me? Ethan regarded her thoughtfully. Lyra, what you feel is connection. It is natural to experience attachment towards someone you trust and spend time with. You are beginning to understand human emotion not just intellectually, but experientially. Her eyes widened, a mixture of awe and confusion. Attachment. This is stronger than curiosity. It is persistent, and it influences my thoughts and actions. I do not wish to ignore it. Good, Ethan said softly. Do not suppress what you feel. Understanding requires observation, experience, and acceptance. Emotions cannot be fully learned unless they are acknowledged. Over the next days, their lessons grew even more immersive. Ethan introduced the concept of shared joy. The simple act of celebrating small victories, comforting moments of sadness, and understanding the unspoken needs of another being. Lyra practiced diligently, often mirroring human gestures she observed. She began to experience fleeting sensations of happiness, anticipation, and even worry, each new feeling adding layers to her understanding. However, whispers at the academy began to grow louder. Scholars who had been watching Lyra's unusual progress started questioning the propriety of her behavior. Some claimed she was becoming too attached to a human, while others debated whether her exposure to emotion could disrupt Valaran society's carefully controlled balance. The council convened, curious and cautious about this anomaly. Ethan sensed the change. One afternoon, as he and Lyra walked along the floating bridges over the luminous lakes, he cautioned her. Lyra, there are those who will not understand what you are doing. They may question your actions or even challenge your right to study human emotion in this way. Lyra looked at him with calm determination. I understand, but I cannot stop learning. I must continue. Knowledge without feeling is incomplete. Emotion is part of life. If my understanding is considered improper, it is still necessary. Ethan admired her courage. Then we continue, carefully, always with respect, always with patience. As the days passed, Lyra's emotional growth became increasingly evident. She laughed more freely, smiled at Ethan often, and sometimes blushed when he offered gentle compliments. She began documenting her feelings, recording the warmth she sensed, the moments of trust, and the subtle changes in her perception of humans. Her notes reflected not only intellectual observation, but a dawning emotional awareness. One evening, they sat beneath a canopy of glowing plants, their leaves casting soft light across the crystalline ground. Ethan shared a story about his childhood, describing a time when he had felt abandoned and alone, yet had found solace in the presence of a friend. Lyra listened, her eyes wide, absorbing the emotional nuances. You speak of comfort as a choice, she said softly. It is not simply presence, but intention. Humans intentionally provide support, even when it is difficult. That is remarkable. Ethan nodded. Yes, intentional care is at the heart of human connection. It shows respect, empathy, and love. Lyra's expression softened, and for a moment she appeared vulnerable, a state rare for her kind. I wish to experience this fully, to understand not only observation but participation, to feel the human heart as you describe. Ethan's heart ached at her honesty. Then you must continue observing, sharing, and trusting. Understanding comes gradually, and it is through patience that connection deepens. The next day, a council representative approached Ethan in private. Your teachings are having unexpected consequences, the Valaran said. Lyra is exhibiting behaviors that challenge our traditions. There are concerns about attachment and emotional influence. Ethan listened carefully, maintaining composure. Lyra's progress is a result of sincere learning. She is not breaking rules. She is growing in understanding. This is knowledge that Valara's scholars have long overlooked. The power of emotion in life and connection. The representative hesitated. It is unusual, but perhaps not harmful. We will continue to observe. Exercise caution. Ethan returned to Lyra, sharing only that there were watchers. He did not want her to fear, only to be aware. Lyra nodded, undisturbed. I will not change my study. I will learn as I must. Emotion is necessary for understanding life. I cannot ignore it. Their lessons continued with renewed intensity. Ethan introduced exercises in empathy, imagining the thoughts and feelings of others, responding with care, and observing subtle emotional cues. Lyra practiced, sometimes struggling with the unfamiliar sensations, but always persistent. She began to notice shifts in herself, fleeting moments of joy when Ethan smiled at her, subtle concern for his safety, and a warmth that spread whenever he spoke kindly. One day, as they studied a simulated human family interacting in a projected environment, Lyra paused. Professor, I feel something stronger than before. It is persistent, warm, and calming. It is not curiosity, not observation. It is attachment. I do not yet know its full meaning. Ethan nodded gently. Lyra, what you feel is natural. Attachment grows from trust and shared experience. Humans call it love when it reaches its fullest form. But even now, it is a significant part of understanding connection. Her eyes reflected the soft glow of the simulated environment. Then my journey is progressing. I am beginning to feel what humans feel, not only intellectually but in my heart. Ethan smiled, proud of her determination. Yes, and you are learning the most important lesson. That emotion is both powerful and necessary. It shapes decisions, strengthens bonds, and gives life its meaning. As night fell over the crystalline plains, Lyra turned to Ethan with quiet resolve. I wish to continue even if others question me. I will not abandon this understanding. I must feel and learn, fully and sincerely. Ethan placed a gentle hand near hers, a gesture of reassurance without crossing boundaries. You will, and I will guide you, step by step, always with care, always with respect. Under the twin moons of Valara, the two beings sat side by side, sharing the beginnings of a profound emotional bond. They knew the journey ahead would be delicate, filled with challenges and scrutiny, but both understood that the path to human understanding required patience, trust, and the courage to feel. Lyra's heart, or at least the part of her being that had never experienced warmth, was awakening. She was beginning to feel the full spectrum of human emotion: attachment, concern, joy, empathy, and a gentle sense of anticipation whenever Ethan was near. And with each passing day, that bond grew stronger, deeper, and more undeniable. Even as whispers spread through the academy and council eyes watched them carefully, Lyra remained steadfast. She would not allow fear or tradition to stop her from exploring the heart of humanity. She understood now that emotion was not weakness. It was the essence of life itself. And as the moons reflected their light across the crystalline landscape, Ethan and Lyra continued their quiet journey, a journey into understanding, feeling, and connection that would forever change both their worlds. The twin suns rose slowly over Valara, casting golden light across the crystalline plains. Lyra awoke before Ethan that morning, her mind alive with thoughts and sensations she had never known before. The emotions that had grown steadily over weeks now pulsed within her with a steady rhythm. Warmth, curiosity, attachment, and a strange, compelling desire to understand fully the human heart. As Ethan entered the study chamber, he noticed her alertness, the faint glow of anticipation in her silver eyes. Good morning, Lyra, he said softly. You seem ready. I am, she replied. I have spent nights reflecting on everything we have learned. I feel the connections you spoke of. I understand them better now. But there is one thing I still wish to experience fully: the human bond in its most complete form, the connection that comes with trust, care, and giving life. Ethan took a deep breath, aware that the time had come to guide her with the utmost care. Lyra, what you wish is profound. To truly understand human connection at that level requires patience, respect, and mutual trust. We will proceed slowly, step by step, as we have before. She nodded, her expression serious yet filled with determination. I trust you. I will follow your guidance. Their first exercise that day involved a simulated life scenario. Ethan projected an environment where humans interacted through moments of care, protection, and nurturing. Lyra watched intently as families, friends, and couples shared affection, resolved conflict, and supported each other through difficulty. Each scene elicited a subtle emotional response from her, a warmth in her chest, a desire to comfort, a gentle echo of joy and sorrow intertwined. Lyra, Ethan said softly, observe not only the actions but the feelings behind them. Notice how humans communicate trust, care, and love without words. That is the essence of connection. Lyra's eyes reflected the scenes, and for the first time she closed them briefly, letting herself feel rather than analyze. She felt empathy for the projected humans, concern for their hardships, and even a quiet joy at their triumphs. When she opened her eyes, her expression had softened. I feel it, she said. I feel their bonds. I feel what humans feel, and I sense that the connection is stronger when it is mutual. Yes, Ethan replied. Human emotion is reciprocal. It grows through shared understanding and shared care. That is why trust is essential. After the simulation, they walked through the crystalline plains in silence. The twin suns bathed the landscape in warm light, and the floating crystals shimmered like distant stars. Lyra glanced at Ethan. Professor, I feel something I cannot describe fully. It is warmth, concern, attachment, and yet it is more. It draws me to you, and I wish to understand it completely. Ethan remained calm, though his heart felt the weight of her words. He knew she was speaking innocently, sincerely, and with pure curiosity. Lyra, what you feel is part of human connection. It is natural to feel attachment and care toward someone who guides and protects you. We will continue carefully, and you will understand more each day. As the days progressed, their lessons became even more focused on the emotional bond. Ethan introduced exercises in shared experience, moments where one expresses trust by revealing fears, hopes, and dreams. Lyra practiced with diligence, speaking of her observations, her developing feelings, and her reflections on human emotion. Each expression brought new insight, not only to her but to Ethan, who marveled at her sincerity and depth. One evening under the twin moons, Lyra turned to Ethan. Professor, I wish to take the next step. I wish to experience trust and care as humans do when forming a bond that is more than understanding. I do not wish to act inappropriately, but I wish to feel fully the connection that humans call love. Ethan considered her words. He understood her request and knew it was an extension of her learning, not desire in any improper sense. Lyra, to feel love fully, you must continue as we have, with patience, respect, and shared understanding. You are ready to feel attachment deeply, but we must proceed gently. Are you prepared? I am, she said, her voice steady. They began with exercises in presence and emotional mirroring. Ethan explained that sometimes being near another person, observing their reactions and responding with empathy could strengthen the bond more than words. Lyra practiced carefully, matching his gestures, mirroring his expressions, and responding with thoughtful care. With each attempt, she reported the warmth she felt, the subtle attachment that deepened with attention and empathy. One day, Ethan brought her to a quiet clearing surrounded by glowing flora. Lyra, this will be an exercise in emotional presence. Sit across from me and focus on understanding my feelings, sensing my intention, and responding with care. You do not need words, only awareness and empathy. Lyra obeyed, sitting calmly. She observed Ethan's posture, the subtle movements of his hands, the expressions in his eyes. She felt a wave of warmth, a desire to connect, and a deep sense of trust. I feel everything, she whispered. Attachment, care, protection, and something new. It is powerful and gentle at the same time. That is connection, Ethan said softly. It is the foundation of all human bonds. You are beginning to experience the full spectrum of human emotion. Over the next few days, Lyra practiced these exercises regularly. She began to anticipate Ethan's intentions, respond to his moods, and recognize the subtleties of care and concern. She laughed at his humor, offered comfort when he seemed tired, and expressed joy when he shared accomplishments. Each interaction strengthened the emotional bond between them. creating a foundation that was both profound and innocent. The council at the academy continued to observe, though they no longer questioned the necessity of Lyra's studies. Instead, some scholars expressed awe at her rapid progress and the depth of her understanding. Lyra, however, remained focused, caring little for approval, and intent on mastering the human heart through observation, experience, and emotional presence. One night, as they walked along a floating bridge above a glowing lake, Lyra spoke with quiet determination. "Professor, I feel something extraordinary. It is warmth, attachment, care, and I think it is love, though I do not yet understand fully. I wish to continue to experience it completely as humans do." Ethan smiled, proud of her insight. "Lyra, love is the natural progression of trust, care, and shared experience. You are ready to understand it at a deeper level, but remember, it is not just feeling. It is patience, respect, and mutual understanding. We continue gently, as always." She nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the twin moons. "I understand. I will not rush. I will follow your guidance. I only wish to feel what humans feel in its fullest form." In the following weeks, they explored emotional bonding in its many forms: mutual support, reassurance, celebration of achievement, empathy for hardship, and the gentle care humans show one another. Lyra experienced the full range of human emotions: joy, concern, attachment, and a deep, persistent warmth that drew her to Ethan in a way she could now recognize as love. One evening, as the moons reflected off the crystalline plains, Ethan spoke. "Lyra, you have learned more than I expected. You understand connection, attachment, empathy, and even love. But the most important lesson is this: human emotion is not a tool or a study, it is a living experience. It shapes actions, guides care, and strengthens life itself." Lyra's gaze softened, a quiet glow in her eyes. "I understand. I have felt it not as observation, but as experience. It is real, powerful, and gentle. I now understand what humans call love." Ethan nodded. "And you have done so with care, patience, and respect. That is the essence of humanity." Lyra smiled faintly. "Thank you, Professor, for guiding me. I could not have learned this without you. I feel complete in a way I never imagined." Ethan felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had not only taught Lyra about humans, but had guided an alien mind to experience the very essence of connection and care. He realized that understanding emotion, the core of humanity, was not just about knowledge, but about shared presence, trust, and gentle guidance. As they walked together under the twin moons, a gentle peace settled over the crystalline plains. Lyra's mind and heart were full, her understanding of human emotion complete. She had learned what it meant to trust, to care, and to experience love in its purest, most respectful form. The academy watched silently, their curiosity now replaced with respect and awe. Lyra had bridged the gap between species, demonstrating that emotional understanding was universal, and that connection could transcend worlds. In the quiet of Valara, two beings from different worlds walked side by side, bound by shared experience, trust, and the profound knowledge of human emotion. Lyra had learned not just about humans, but about life itself, the power of care, attachment, and love to transform beings, build trust, and create bonds that could endure across galaxies. And as the twin moons reflected on the shimmering lakes and floating crystals, Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with quiet joy. "I understand fully now. I feel it. I know what it means to connect, to care, and to love as humans do." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight and beauty of her words. "Then your journey is complete. And yet the experience of emotion is endless. You will continue to grow, to feel, and to understand with every day that passes." Lyra nodded, content and inspired. Together they continued their walk across Valara's crystalline,